are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case.
We will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Bobbie O'Brien. Bobbie, APMP Fellow, continues her attempt to retire. With almost 30 years experience in the federal sector, she provides leadership to diverse proposal teams with direct accountability for leading strategic opportunities, as well as development and continuous improvement of processes. Bobbie served on APMP's International Board, Regional and Strategic Initiatives Director, and was founding co-chair of the Liberty Chapter, formerly known as New York Metro. Welcome, Bobbie, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you on here. And we know that your history with proposals goes back pretty far, so we're excited to hear some of those stories on the podcast today. But we're going to start a little bit earlier than that. We're curious, where were you born? Where did you grow up, and where did you go to school?
I was born in Newark, New Jersey. So Essex County, New Jersey, which is northern Jersey, very, very close to New York City. I grew up in a town called Bloomfield, kind of one of those sleepy, suburban neighborhoods. Nothing untoward, great childhood, older sister, younger sister, that kind of a situation. Went through all of schooling in Bloomfield. And it wasn't until I went out to California that I actually did some college work, and that was at Indian Valley Colleges, which was one of the two campuses of the Marin Community College system. And one person of note that was also attending was Robin Williams. So,
oh, wow.
Yes, that was in Marin County, California, so just north of San Francisco, and a lot of fun things happening back in those days. And it was great to go to school. Geology was the major, and be just in that San Francisco Bay Area environment back in the kind of the Haight-Ashbury days, late 60s, early 70s. It's a lot of fun. I was out there for about 20 years.
Oh, wow. So you said you studied geology?
Yes, right? How did I get into this business? Kind of like the rest of us that were kind of the early pioneers, I guess. So yes, geology. Once I was out in California, I really wanted to know, why was the ground constantly shaking under my feet? So that was my interest in finding out all about the geology of the Northern California area. And then, of course, that just expanded into, nationally.
Yeah. So was your first job outside of, that schooling in geology, or what was your first job outside of school?
My first full-time real job, and we'll start it in California as opposed to New Jersey, because, of course, I started working when I was 16. I was a horseback riding counselor, and then I did administrative work for an insurance company called Alexander and Alexander, and that was all in New Jersey. But once I got out to California, I ended up working nowhere near what geology subjects had anything to do with, but it was a company that put together limited partnerships, and for a while worked in San Francisco, and then their offices moved to Sausalito. And so I had a great career working with a view of the San Francisco Bay over in Marin County. And the limited partnerships were at that time being, trying to think of the right word, let's just say the IRS had some questions about how those partnerships were being formed, and were they really a partnership, or was it really a lot of the characteristics of a corporation? So that was interesting to go through that. But it was almost like business development, because we have many, many investors and particular clients that were purchasing, in these cases, property all over California. So walnut orchards and then student housing as well in Northern California. And there's some crazy stories with, motorcycles being painted black in bathtubs and things like that. It was a lot of fun. But have I ever put the geology to work? No, it became an avocation, which meant a lot of outdoor activities and field trips and things of that nature, but never had to put any of that scholarly learning to bear.
I think that's common for so many of us.
I agree.
So you talked about kind of that business development type role, but it wasn't quite proposals. When did you eventually enter the proposal world then?
Well, when let's see, it was probably 1989 time frame. I returned to the East Coast from the West Coast, and the situation was that I decided I wasn't going back to New Jersey, that I'd kind of had enough of that, and decided that I had always enjoyed living or visiting my sister, who was living here in either upstate or central New York, depending on whether you're a downstater or an upstater. So I ended up coming here to Rome, New York, and just was looking for a job. And at the time, in those years, I had universal skills, as we called them. I could type 120 words a minute. I was very organized. I could, the administrative type of work was pretty much my forte. And I ended up getting a job with a company. It was always known in those years as Rome Research Corporation. It was a subsidiary of PAR, Government Systems. And so I started working in their program management office. And when the contract that I was on started to shrink a little in personnel, they said, you know what, Bobbie's pretty good at all of this, office administrative stuff, keeping organized, putting things together. Let's bring her over to the corporate offices and put her in the business development, department. And so that's where it all started, and started putting together some of the proposal responses. The company had one major contract with the Air Force Research Lab. So it was very interesting, and pretty much direct liaison with the site managers and the contracting officers and the technical directors and things like that. So that was a lot of fun and very interesting. I got to meet a lot of very interesting people. And the specialty of the company, their little niche was Navy radar systems, and the Army had a lot of gig sites, global information grids. So it was very interesting and very exciting. And I think we can all agree that no matter what area you are, proposal work is always a variation on that theme. And it's just so interesting. Every single one is different. And that's pretty much been the truth through all these almost 30 years in the industry.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So before we, started the podcast, you hinted that you have been around and you saw some interesting trends in terms of, actual cut and paste. Can you tell us a little bit about how proposals have changed, maybe in how we operate?
Well, even the changes in hardware, the software wasn't really a thing. We had to use Word Perfect back in those days, and sometimes even just Notepad in the very early days of the computers. But yes, there are some folks who may listen to this will be of an age that, as I mentioned, the word spray mount, that was how we cut and paste. We had literal photographs, lucky if they were color, literal photographs that we cut very carefully using a paper cutter and then sprayed them. It's almost like spraying Aquanet hairspray. You sprayed the back of the photograph and then carefully, no shaking hands, carefully place that on the literal piece of paper that was a part of your proposal response. So you had to make sure your spacing was all good and everything was, how we put things up on the wall nowadays. We had to make sure that it was laying out on a table so we knew exactly how big could the pictures be, where were they going to fit. It was fun in those days. And they were 2-hole punch on the top. None of this 3-ring binder stuff. Oh, yeah. And carbon copies and whiteout, liquid whiteout. Those were the days. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, not a lot of room for error.
Yeah, enormous color printers and enormous copying machines. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we had to wait for the U.S. mail to deliver a lot of the solicitation documentation, unless you were very close to the customer site and you could go and pick it up, at their site. They were all delivered by the mail, the U.S. mail.
That's right. There was no beta SAM in those days.
No electronics.
Oh my goodness. Things we
have
don't think about today.
We had electric typewriters.
So you kind of alluded to this. You have nearly 30 years in the federal sector. I'm sure you have some memorable proposal efforts over the years. Are there any that stick out in your mind?
One of them in those early years, we were bidding against the government. It was out in California. It was a Navy situation. It was back in the days of A-76s, which I don't even know if they're around anymore. I haven't heard of one in a very long time. And that was where you were literally bidding against the government, and you had to beat them by a certain percentage of cost. And it was extraordinarily difficult to usurp, as it were, government employees at a site. And this particular A-76, it was in Southern California, and the paper load was unbelievable. The cost volume was multiple 3-inch 3-ring binders that were all landscaped tabloid, which is 11 by 17. So you had to fold every single one of those pages. And so it was fascinating to do the work. We definitely had the expertise, and we had the skills technically. The pricing was just a nightmare. I can't even imagine what they went through to get to that, those spreadsheets. But what happened was, that was so interesting, we had to go back and forth with the government and submit multiple times. And I'm trying to remember, there must have been at least 10 volumes. So these are all 3-ring binders, 10 volumes. And I think we had to resubmit 6, 7, 8 times.
Oh my gosh.
And all I could think about was all of these 3-ring binders, like in a heap somewhere, with all the multiple, until you could get to the best and final offer. There were 1 million proposal revisions that were submitted, and you had to submit in its entirety every single time. And in the end, after all was said and done, and it went on for quite some time, the company did win over the government at that site, and I believe they're still there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they've been winning the recompetes. Although I'm not 100% if that's true, because at the time the company was a small business. So they have grown in the interim, so they may have had to find another small to subcontract with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just pictured you Z-folding over and over multiple iterations of multiple binders,
it was
Bobbie.
Unbelievable. But I'll tell you what, working on proposals like that, especially in the early days when you're all kind of entrenched together, it makes for such great relationships. And the core group that you always are working with. There's such a camaraderie, and you can kind of kid and fool around, and nobody's going to take offense, and you're all exhausted, and it just made for really, really great relationships with folks that you were working closely with. So I really cherish those early years, when we were so bonded together, and it really was roll up your sleeves and sitting on the floor and putting together the binders, because you've already covered every conference room's tabletop with 3-ring binders. So it was great years.
Yeah, and particularly with the pandemic, that's preventing that even when it was happening. I really do miss those days. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So before we dig a little bit deeper into APMP and a little bit more about your career, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
3 things. 3 things people may not know about me. I'm not sure if my mother even knows this one. It was the early version. And I kind of have told a little bit of this story to a few friends, but very early on, when I was a mischievous young person, I lived very, very close to Greenwich Village in northern New Jersey. And so I would venture through the tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, and I did some go-go dancing at the time. There were a couple of clubs in the village at the time, the Purple Onion and the Gold Bug. And, we're not going to say anything about fake IDs or anything like that. Back in the days when 18 was the age for New York. So that's one thing, go-go dancer. Another thing people may not know about me. In my years in California, most of the time, my friend and I had, her family had property in Marin County, and we had horses, a goat, sheep, Mary Lou the sheep. We had 13 cats, 8 dogs, birds from finches all the way up to military macaws, ducks, rabbits, chickens, of course. And we had Araucana chickens, and those are the ones that lay the green eggs.
Oh, I love those.
So there really are such a thing as green eggs. And so that was a very exciting time. And again, some folks who do know me well, an hour and a half in the morning, 2 hours at night to feed everybody, and having the vet come out to the property and taking care of all of the animals outside, or having them come out of whatever anesthesia they may have had in the bathtub. So just such great times and great adventures, and a lot of gymkhanas for the younger kids in the families, and just super, super times. So that's 2. What is the third one? I'm such an open book that there's really no, I don't know what the third one might be.
Well, the first 2 were very fascinating.
Well, I absolutely do. As social as I can be, I sometimes really do prefer kicking around by myself. And I've never stopped doing something because I didn't have people to come with me to go do something. So that's something about me as well, I guess.
Yeah, great. So let's delve into APMP a little bit. When did you join APMP as a member?
Well, I'm pretty sure it was like 2006. It may have been late in 2005. And that was when the Now Liberty chapter, which was New York Metro, that was when New York Metro was just getting itself going. And Barry Campbell was the guy who got everything going to begin with. And he was reaching out to folks, asking who would be interested to join and get things started. So I worked with him kind of as like a co-chair, a co-founder in the early days. So I think it must have been like 2006. And I remember that things that Barry moved into doing some other things, and he admittedly didn't have a whole bunch of time. So there were a couple of others of us that decided that, you know, we would make sure that New York Metro, you know, got a new shot in the arm. And I remember, I hope I'm not leaving anyone out, the two other people I remember the most are Melissa DeMeo and Laura Higgins. And we kind of crashed a conference, and it was my first conference that I'd gone to. It was in Savannah, and so I think Savannah was like 2007. And so we crashed like a meeting that was being held with some of the other chapters because we wanted to know what we needed to do to resurrect New York Metro. So that was a lot of fun. And that was when Dick Easom was, at the time, they were the CEO. So yeah, Dick Easom, that was one of his stints as the CEO of APMP. So that was fun. And Savannah was just wonderful. And I really didn't know anyone. I knew my New York Metro cohorts, you know, electronically. But so that was my real first initiation into APMP. And I'm sure others have said, and I know, you know, Mike has said on his, and it was just such a relief to know that there were others out there that felt our pain. They knew exactly what we were talking about and didn't have that zoned out look that all of our friends and family members get when we start talking about what it is we do and how frustrating it can be sometimes. So that was pretty much the start for me in my affiliation with APMP.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you mentioned Savannah as, you know, obviously a very memorable BidCon experience. Are there any other experiences at BidCon that really stand out to you?
Well, I have always loved going to them, and I kind of teeter on, do I prefer to go just as a member so I can just take in everything in as much as I can? Or was it even more rewarding when I was a part of the international board and so had, you know, responsibilities and activities and stuff, you know, that I was helping to ensure that everything went off well for everybody else, but then you didn't get to go to all of the sessions that you wanted to.
Yeah.
I have to say, probably maybe the one that was held in Rancho Mirage, which was probably like 2008, if I'm remembering back correctly. And it is getting a little fuzzy at my advanced age. Rancho Mirage was great. Everybody was at, I forget the name of where they were, but I registered so late I couldn't stay where the conference was being held. And I ended up at a brand new casino that had just opened. And when I got there and checked in, they sadly did not have a non-smoking room, and I had just quit smoking.
Oh, no.
And so I was very insistent that you have got to accommodate me. You said you could. And I ended up in this enormous suite. It was like a VIP suite. So that was really wonderful. So that was great. So I had to kind of commute back and forth. But memorable for me professionally because for some reason at that one, it became so clear that I wanted to be more involved with APMP itself, and met a person at that conference who has made a significant impact in my life, and that would be Betsy Blakeney, who is a dear, dear friend. She's like a sister to me now. And that was when she started, of course, as we all know and love Betsy, started making things happening so that I could have more involvement with APMP itself. And I also remember at any conference that APMP has, I always find out if there's some way that I can go horseback riding while I'm there. I miss the And so, of course, at Rancho Mirage, it was just gorgeous horseback riding out on the desert. So for me, I'll always remember Rancho Mirage that way. And I also always enjoyed going to SPAC, the conferences that they have, the regional SPAC conferences, and the ones that especially the early on years, the ones that the Nor'easters held. So those have always held special places in my heart.
Oh, wow. So that particular BidCon and, meeting Betsy and getting involved, is that when you soon after that joined the APMP International Board?
Yes. And actually, I think it was at one of the SPAC regional ones. I remember sitting in a plenary session and had my shoulder tapped on. And I think it was Betsy, and at the time it was probably Dave Winton, pulled me out of the meeting and asked if I would be interested in joining International as the regional director of the eastern areas. So that was at the time the entire eastern seaboard and all of Canada. So that was that. And that was just wonderful. Oh my gosh, I got to meet so many people and such a great experience. So that would have been, probably 2008, somewhere in around there.
Oh, wow.
And that's where it all began.
Yeah, right? So you kind of mentioned, kind of that push and pull of, do you contribute? Do you just want to be a participant? And like you get different things out of it for each kind of, level of participation. So you have been an avid contributor to the bid and proposal community for so long. Any memorable experiences that you could share with us?
You know what I really enjoyed, and I don't know how much it's being done now, but what I really enjoyed was for a while, and of course Rick is just amazing, Rick Harris, and he had created a scenario where the fellows would kind of sign up and say, okay, I'm going to hang out in this room over here, and folks can just kind of drop in and have a conversation, ask questions. And I think that was so fascinating because you meet people that are not in the same swim lanes you are as far as what industry you're doing. And for a while as strategic initiatives director on the international board, I got to know a lot of people that at that time there were different task forces. So the beginnings of commercial and of course the federal and healthcare. And so folks just coming in and sitting down and just talking with them about what they're going through. The one thing that I always remember was the fact that I was always in federal. I've never done local, state, or commercial. And so for me, it was always such a great learning experience to be talking with folks that are in the commercial sector and seeing, oh my gosh, there are a lot of things that we do that are the same, and also getting some really great ideas, as to how to organize things or how to approach things or how they approach things, and then being able to take that information and morph it so that you can live with it under, of course, the stringent guidelines that we have in the federal sector. Right. And I think some of the most fun stuff was, and this is coming from BJ, some of the talks that he's given about how, they've delivered commercial proposals inside of toolboxes because it was for like a company like Home Depot or Lowe's, and thinking, boy, I wish we had the ability to do that, innovative, really cool stuff. So that, and I think one of the other ones that really stands out, and I know that, some of us seem to be, very gregarious and outgoing, but when I was asked to do an Ignite talk, I don't think I have ever been more nervous in my life. And so that's a whole other story of when I did my Ignite talk. And I think I shocked the APMP world at that point, but I was given a challenge at the time. It was, trying to remember, it was in New Orleans, 2017, that was it. And at the time, Kristen Dufresne was the director, or as we used to call them, the CEO. Kristen gave me a challenge that I don't think she thought I would follow through on. And those folks who were there at the time will remember that her challenge to me was, when you get up to do your Ignite talk, how about if you wear a tutu and a boa? Right? And you're trying to be very serious. And my Ignite was all about how sometimes you can go back home, and kind of the trajectory of my career at that point. And I spent, I don't know how many hours, it was pouring down rain, and I had a contingent of folks there that I worked with. And we were going up and down in New Orleans trying to find a tutu that had twinkling lights. Okay, because at the time when we were in New Orleans, we were there and it was gay pride time, and some of them had these phenomenal tutus, the folks that were participating in the parade. And I said, I want one of those, with the blinking lights. It's like Christmas lights in a tutu.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't find one, but I did find a boa and I did find a tutu. And I was sitting, trying to be very coy. And I remember Mike Walsh was sitting next to me, and trying to be very coy about the whole thing. And then when I knew the person got up and did their Ignite talk before me, I kind of scooted off to the side over by the audio guys that were kind of behind a wall thing. And I pulled on the tutu and I threw on the boa, and I had like a New Orleans kind of visor cap on, and walked up on stage like that. And absolutely, of course, at the moment said, listen, this was a challenge. This is why I am dressed the way that I am. And of course, the pictures that were taken afterward, I am still in the tutu and the boa. So probably if you go out and look at the photos from the Ignite stuff from New Orleans, you're going to see a few pictures of me in a tutu. So that was, of course, extremely memorable, and it was an exciting experience. And a lot of fun. So that's probably one of the best memories I have from a conference.
Oh my gosh, Bobbie, I can't believe this is the first time I'm hearing this story about you.
Oh, really? Oh, I
Yeah.
think that's good, actually. I didn't harm my career as much as I thought I might have.
Oh my gosh, no.
When Kristen Dufresne challenges you to do something, you cannot fail her. And of course, that was the same year that they were getting dressed up as the Kardashians. So I wasn't the only one who was attending the sessions in costume. So it was a fun year in New Orleans. Oh, and it was so hot and muggy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. Well, that is an excellent transition over to our round 3, where Bhaskar will delve into some kind of more fun, lighthearted questions.
Sure.
Yes, Bobbie. Bobbie, let's talk about your hobbies and interests, Bobbie, before we move in. Maybe you could share a few of us.
Sure. Oh, hobbies and interests. Well, in where I live now, upstate New York, I think there's a lot of jokes and certainly thousands of memes that you can find online about how, it's winter and then it's August and then it's winter again. So lives up here certainly revolve around the seasons. So I think just hobbies for the most part. In the winter months, I'm not an outdoor sports person. I don't mind going for walks in the winter, but you're not going to find me on skis or snowboarding or anything like that. The winter time is a time for me to kind of do the stuff in the house that you've been putting off forever. And I love to knit. I'm an avid reader. Things along that nature. And also, although it is winter and we get an incredible amount of snow, folks up here don't find that as a barrier to going out and doing things. So there are a lot of activities that are going on within our community and of course in the region as well. So there's always something going on in the winter. And then of course when spring comes, we all rush outside. It's like you have to get outside right away because you just don't know how long the season's going to last. So, the spring is gorgeous, and that's when we get outside and we start doing a lot of outside stuff, a lot of bicycle riding. Right here in my own community, we have phenomenal bike trails and walking trails. And of course, I'm in the foothills of the Adirondacks, and it's just gorgeous, springtime and fall. Just beautiful times of year. So we do a lot of outdoor activities and hiking and biking, and there's a lot of great stuff right along the Erie Canal here. I am very, very lucky to live in an area where the Erie Canal was born. And so one of my huge interests, and always has been, is history. And I ended up in an area that is so rich in American history that I could probably talk for days and days and days, and I'm sure people have lamented that fact. One of the most important things I think I'm doing on a personal basis and as a part of my community is I am president of the Board of Trustees of our local, the City of Rome, our historical society. And so that has been just a wonderful experience, making sure that the community and our, high school, elementary schools are aware of the huge contributions that Rome itself and our region as well has participated in all of American history. So, knowing most people just kind of refer to the Erie Canal and, and the silly song that goes along with it, but there are actually 4 canals. Starting way back in the Wayback Times, late in the 1700s. So it's just fascinating to me, and there's so much to be done. And it's been very difficult during this pandemic in that New York, I'm sure everybody's aware, is so very strict about activities and gatherings and the ability to move about the country. And so for us, sadly, we've had to shutter our museum, and it has been that way since mid-March. We now, our executive director and our educator are back inside the building in the museum. So that's great. And we've entered into the world. We may be a historical society, but we've just now started putting our programming on Facebook. We have always had a third Wednesday programming event. And so now we've just moved that over to Facebook. So, getting new ways to reach our membership, our community. And so that's really my big love right now. It takes quite a bit of my time, but I love it. I enjoy it. And there is so much history here, and there's so many things that are still happening on the canal itself. And we have a lot of Revolutionary War battle sites locally. So there's always a million things that you can be doing and a million adventures to go on. So I would say those are my biggest interests and hobbies. For a long time, I was also involved in the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life. I was a team captain for a while, and I started getting involved with that when I lost my younger sister to ovarian cancer, and that was great. And of course, another wonderful community event, and the people that you meet, such unbelievable stories. And of course, as someone who has heart disease, I participate in a few things with the American Heart Association, especially as regards the Go Red for Women activities that they have. So I keep pretty busy. The job is busy, and you just have to stay, solidly within your community. It's just so fascinating to know the inner workings and meeting the people who have been, native Romans, as we call them, that have been here for so long and seen so many changes. So those are my loves. And every once in a while I get to go out there with my geology hammer, which is old and rusty, and knock around some rocks. So, I keep my fingers in a few pies in that regard.
That's amazing, Bobbie. It's just fascinating, a long, illustrious career and still going strong at the same time. You have such a wide interest in life. So let's touch one at a time. Officially, we are entering round 3, the Nutters round, in honors of Howard Nutt. Used to be rapid random fire question round. Bobbie, are you ready?
I hope so.
Yes. So if you could go back to history and meet one person, who would you meet and why?
Go back in history and meet one person. Wow. I think that it would probably be Abraham Lincoln. Because of my love of history and the groundbreaking things that occurred while he was in residence. He's always been a fascinating person to me. And of course, he would probably be my first choice, but I think I would like to also have met Francis Bellamy, who played a huge role in our local area here and as a part of, the American history. So Francis Bellamy would have been an interesting person to me too. So I think those would probably be my 2 tops.
Perfect. Yes. How do you think your life would change if you didn't need to sleep? What would you do with the extra time?
Oh, I sleep so little already. And of course, in this career, you're lucky if you can get a couple hours shut-eye. If I didn't have to sleep, what else would I do? I would probably hearken back to some of the California days when we had so many animals of our own, and we knew, folks in the community knew at the time that if they had a problem, they could bring their animals. So sometimes we would find, we had a semicircular driveway to the property, and of course both were gated. And so there were days when we would get up and look outside, and there would be either a strange horse or a new dog or a donkey that was, on the property that wasn't there when we went to sleep. So probably something to do with, the sheltered areas for animals in need. I've always been an animal lover. I've always had animals. For the first time in my life, I have a singular cat now. But yeah, probably if I didn't have to sleep, I would spend more time tending to our 4-legged friends.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So if you had the power to shrink anything and take it with you, what would you do with it? And what would you take with you?
I would shrink a spaceship. If there was one thing, aside from growing up to be a cowboy, if there was one thing that always fascinated me, it was space. I would have loved to go into space. So if I could have shrunken a spaceship or, any kind of a vehicle that would have gone into outer space and put it in my pocket and hang on to it and then make it large when I've, done all the qualifications to go into space, take that with me and go and explore the universe. That has always fascinated me. It's probably why I'm so fascinated with a lot of either sci-fi or things to do with space, and maybe, Marvel universe movies and stuff. I'm always fascinated with other worlds and other lands. So I would like to have a spaceship that I could take with me and just launch it whenever I wanted to go elsewhere off-world.
Dear history, geology, and now science and science fiction. What was your favorite subject in school?
I probably history.
Oh, interesting.
Always fascinated with history. But other than that, what subject in school? My mother would respond, none of them. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to stick with that. Although I did take, in junior high school, I took metal shop and I made a lamp in metal shop. And that was something very interesting to me.
So if you could be any male or female sports star, who would you be?
Oh, hands down, Secretariat. Am I allowed to be a horse?
Yeah.
I would be Secretariat. Absolutely. Triple Crown winner. Oh, I probably have hundreds of articles about Secretariat and consistently watched the movie over and over and over again. Just such a fascinating, amazing athlete that horse was. And I think they had hoped that there were many prodigy coming from Secretariat that would have been outstanding racers in themselves. And it turned out that only the mares, the women of the crew, were the ones who were able to produce winning get from that. So yes, Secretariat, absolutely.
That's a very unique response for this question. If you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 items would you take with you?
My Kindle, for sure. I need to have my reading material. I would take Betsy Blakeney with me and Beth Wingate. Those would be my 3 things.
That's so cute. Beth is going to come soon, early October. So I will let her listen to this before. That's nice. So if you had to choose a completely new profession, what would you pick?
New profession. It would probably be along the lines of one of my loves, and that would be, I seriously always wanted to be a cowboy. Mm-hmm. And I do have an acquaintance from many years ago when we were in California, and they do have a cattle ranch. So it was always wonderful to go out to their place and just go into it was the high desert where they were in Nevada. Now they're in New Mexico. But yes, I've always wanted to be a cowboy.
That's interesting. And do you have a favorite cowboy movie?
Well, not so much cowboy, but my favorite movie of all time is Dances with Wolves.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Any reason why?
It's just a beautiful story. It really, really is a beautiful story, and the trials and tribulations of Native Americans and the early years of settling our country and some of the forts that were out there in the Midwestern plains. Just a great story, and I admire Kevin Costner. He always does really good work with his movies.
That's brilliant. What trait do you like the most about yourself?
I'm a good friend. I'm a good and loyal friend. Maybe not as good as I should be sometimes, but I'm really a good and loyal friend. If I weren't so busy, I'd be much better at it. But yes, I'm a good and loyal friend. I'm there for folks when they need me, and always have an open ear.
That's brilliant. And I'm sure listeners will agree with that as well, 100%, Bobbie. So,
well, thank you.
Would you rather lose the ability to write or the ability to speak?
The ability to write. Although I do love to talk, I have no problem with long periods of silent time. But I cherish my eyesight and the ability to put pen to paper. Absolutely.
That's beautiful. So what's the most interesting thing that you have read recently or in the past? I tend to stick to novels. The book that I'm reading right now, I would have never thought to read in a million years. My niece's son, who just turned 16, recommended a book, and it's one of these apocalyptic times situation and geared more toward young readers. And it's fascinating. It really is. So I'm enjoying reading that. And if I could remember the title, I'd be really in good shape. And that's one of the things that I don't like about electronic reading is you forget the titles of the books you're reading. So that to me is different and new and refreshing. But one of the books that I enjoyed immensely was Where the Crawdad Sings. I think that's the title of it. I sat down to read that and I didn't get up till I was done. What a phenomenal read. And so I lose myself in novels because my day-to-day doings, my real world life is so involved in, government regulation and, facts, and I want to sit down. I want to read books that take me away from the world that I live in, and watch movies that harken back to earlier times and also take me off world. I want somebody to tell me wonderful, fascinating stories.
That's true. So after you survive the apocalypse, what will you do?
Oh, once I've survived the apocalypse, I think that I would need to join a community to start growing crops again, and farming and husbandry and things, definitely getting back to the land and getting ourselves back into stronger ecologies so that we can take care of ourselves nutritionally. And that way, when you're healthy in body, then you can continue to expand mind. And so, yeah, that's what I would want to do. I would want to be part of a community that is rebuilding for the future.
That's brilliant. If you could eat only one food for the rest of your life, which food would you choose?
Sushi. Is there any other food in the world right now? Sushi, absolutely.
It's interesting. Oh my God, I didn't realize sushi is that popular worldwide. I do take it for granted when my wife makes sushi at home. She's a sushi chef.
Oh, I would love to have on-demand sushi.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dear God, you are always invited. Next time you're in London, Bobbie, I will host you.
Oh, thank you so much. I may take you up on that one of these days.
Exactly. So would you prefer to live in the Sahara or in the Antarctica?
Sahara. I like heat.
Okay, so the last one from me is, if you were invisible for 12 hours, what would you do?
Oh, invisible for 12 hours. I would, regardless of who is in office right now, I would go to the White House and I would stay in the Oval Office and listen to what's going on there. And then I would run over and I would go to NASA headquarters, and I would, go to as many places as I could and find out what they're doing behind the scenes. That stuff fascinates me. To be a fly on the wall in some of those, really critical of national importance. Oh yeah, I could think of a whole bunch of places. I've always been fascinated with the goings on behind closed doors, which is probably why I get involved in my community with our local politics. Not so much politics as government. But oh yes, I would love to be in the Oval Office and the West Wing, invisible, and listen in. Oh heck yeah.
100%. So who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Oh, career, my mom, of course. I'm like her carbon copy. I try to be as strong as she is. God bless her. She's 94 and still driving all of us crazy, which is wonderful. My mom, in a personal regard, yeah, my mom. Of course, my sisters, close family. As far as career goes, I would say from the last part of my career, absolutely Betsy Blakeney has had an impact in my life. So it would be Betsy. And there are a few people that I work with that I have admired through the years that have just been so open and sharing of their knowledge. And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about APMP is that when we get to those conferences, There's no closed minds. Everybody is open to sharing and learning and getting together and collaborating. The networking is just amazing. So yeah, mom and for my career wise, in these last years, it's definitely been Betsy. She's so smart. She's so smart and so down to earth.
Yes. So if Betsy is listening now, what would we want to say to Betsy?
Good morning. What would I say to Betsy? Thank you. She knows that. She knows how much I appreciate her. And we have gone on some wonderful adventures, some of which occur when the conferences are over annually. Betsy and I usually try to go and do something, and she's the instigator. She's always finding something cool to do, like once the conference is over, and we go and we spend a couple of days on a yacht at the marina in San Diego, silly things like that. Or when the conference was in Denver, I went to a dude ranch in Peaceful Valley beforehand, and she and her husband, Bob, were at a beautiful place that was up near the Continental Divide, and we'd get together and do activities and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Perfect. So who is the kindest person you know?
The kindest person I know.
Yeah.
Maybe my son. He's a good soul. Yeah, my son. He's a good soul.
Yes. So if I ask your son, can you give a reference about mommy? What do you think he would say about you?
What would he say? Oh boy. What would he say about me? I think he would say that I'm always there for him. I think he would say that he hated doing yard work with me because he always complained that no one could keep up with me. I think he would say that I was a good mom now that he's grown and living in San Antonio.
Brilliant. So what's the best piece of advice you have received and from who?
Best piece of advice. Not so much a who as a what. Many years ago, and I used to use this saying quite a bit, and it's probably a part of my upbringing as well by a very strong, independent woman. And so I have a saying that's always in the back of my mind. And in this time of remembering women's suffrage, women who seek to be equal with men lack ambition. And that's a little snooty-woody or whatever, but I've always kept it in the back of my mind that the sky's the limit, just always be out there reaching and attaining. And so I think my mom, being as independent as she was, instilled a lot of those strengths in not just me, but my sisters as well.
Brilliant. So what have you observed lately that reminded you that people are kind and good?
I think I see a lot of that now in this time of pandemic, that my community is a very kind community that always steps up when there's some sort of an adversity. And so I think that just a general sense of collaboration, compassion, things of that nature. Lately, when you're in the grocery stores here and you can tell by the sparkle in someone's eye that they're smiling at you behind that mask. Just instances like that of, still folks helping folks out. And it is tough times. And we are very lucky in our area that we have not been as hard hit. And I think that's because there is that sense of community of everybody pulling together and just little small acts of kindness. And I know that I see that here locally, but I also see that where my mom lives, which is in Williamsburg, Virginia, and of course at her age, her community and her neighbors are so giving and help her out in so many different ways that, you know, it brings a smile to your face, and it gives me, living 10 hours away from her, such a sense of security in that I know that she has people right there close to her taking care of her. So I'm lucky. I really have been lucky.
Yes, I think abundance always comes to people who give love, to give and share love. Bobbie, I'm sure you have enough abundance in your life. Brilliant. The last one from me before Ashley takes over is, what is of something that is of sentimental value to you?
I have in my possession an Alrathia kingi, which is a trilobite. And this goes back to the geology days of field trips. And we were in the Nevada desert, and with our geology hammers, we were in an area where there were a lot of fossils. And I hit a piece of shale just right, trilobite, and it's 500 million years old. For some reason, I call her Lucy. I don't know why, but that has been with me since the 70s and doesn't leave my side. It's always close to hand. So that silly thing is just a part of who I am, and is a treasured memory.
That's beautiful. I love Lucy, the name. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bobbie.
Thank you.
All right, Bobbie, we're down to our final 3 questions. It's been so fun learning more about you. I'm one of the lucky ones who, got to work with you and learn from you directly. So I'm excited that we're sharing your story with so many in the community.
Thanks, Ashley.
But looking back, what's one thing that you wish you had known when you began your career?
One thing I wish I had known. I think a lot of the adventure is learning new things and having things kind of dumped in your lap that you're going, oh my gosh, I've never seen her done this before. One thing I had known, I probably would have spent a little more time learning other areas of the industry that we are in. I have been so focused on proposal development and management that the pricing part of it is fascinating. I wish I could have, had more time and learned more about that aspect, as well as the contracting side of things. So professionally, I think, in hindsight, I should have spent more time learning those aspects in addition to, focusing so strongly just on proposal development, and working with teams.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely see where that could, help expand and even make the proposal management side even stronger.
Absolutely. I've been lucky all along that the teams that I have worked with, for the most part, everybody is so collaborative and working together. So, you learn, through osmosis, as it were. But boy, to have had a much stronger foundation in some of those areas, that would have been a definite plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've had this very long, very successful career. What advice would you give to someone wanting to have a similarly successful proposal career?
Join APMP as soon as you possibly can. Well, it's our people, as it were, it just to have that network of folks. I don't think any of us could say that we would be where we are in our careers if it hadn't been for APMP and the networking and being there, watching our industry grow up and become more and more professional.
I would just say, never be afraid to ask the questions. Never be afraid to walk up to, at a conference, walk up to a stranger because you heard them speak in a session, or, someone has recommended that you reach out to someone. Never hesitate. It's such a great group of folks to be involved with. Go out to APMP, Google and find somebody that is either in your industry, your area of the industry, or something that you want to learn more about, and reach out. Absolutely. That is one of the things that I do love the most about APMP, is bringing all of us together. And because we have so many different aspects, the federal, local, state, commercial, health, engineering, there's so many different aspects of our world. It's always refreshing to learn new things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Such amazing advice. And definitely, when you are young in the profession, you might be scared to reach out and ask those questions, and everyone is so welcoming. So great advice, great encouragement. So my last one for you, Bobbie, is what's next for you? What are you looking forward to in the future?
Well, as a matter of fact, I am going to come off the full-time payroll world probably in another week now. I'm making yet another attempt to, and I can't use the word retirement without the word semi in front of it. I'm going to take a little bit of downtime, relax a little bit, and, then I'll hang the shingle back up for, doing consulting work. So much of our world has grown up and adapted itself beautifully to working virtually. Mm-hmm. So, the opportunities are endless. I, of course, want to keep my fingers in the pie, but I do kind of want to slow down and maybe get to choose which bids I want to work on. So there's a little bit of downtime and vacation time in between. So, I'm embarking on that next road pretty quick here in the next week or so. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to, just spending some time, maybe focusing a little harder on some of my activities with the Historical Society. Mm-hmm. If we ever get things opened up a little bit more to travel with the pandemic, definitely head back down to Virginia and spend time with family and friends and all that. So that's the next step. It's coming up pretty quick here.
Very exciting. I'm so happy for you. You've definitely earned it, and well-deserved semi-retirement coming up.
Thanks. I'm definitely going to follow in my mom's footsteps and just keep working for as long as I possibly can. I think it's healthy. I think it's great. And I think it's a part of living longer, to stay engaged. So definitely. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yes, Bobbie, thank you so much. Bobbie, is there any part of your life or career that we haven't touched, or is there anything else you would like to say before we close the podcast?
I don't think so. I only that, and I've said it before, I'm so lucky. I've had a great life. I really have. So many exciting things have happened during my lifetime. So really, just in closing for me, I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm a big fan of a few different podcasts. So to be asked to participate in one was like, oh my gosh, I have made it in life. I'm on a panel. It's great. And to have one that's relative to our industry is wonderful. So for me, just in closing, thank you for the opportunity. I really, really appreciate it.
Bobbie, thank you so much for joining Scribble Talk today. It's been an absolute privilege to have you with me and Ashley. Wish you all the good health and happiness. Please do continue to inspire not just bid and proposal colleagues, but your history association colleagues and all the animals that you'll be inspiring. Everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay kind, and thank you again, Bobbie. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Pastor Sundram,
signing off.